Welcome to the show. I'm Veronica Newfer, and I'm at the state capitol with Senator Kim Thatcher. There is a supermajority, so the Democrats can basically do whatever they want, and so we're going to find out what that is looking like so far. The session started January 22nd, and so there have been some things beginning, and we'll see how we expect it to end. I guess we won't know for sure until it happens, but thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, this will be an interesting session. A lot of big ideas coming out from the other side of the aisle that kind of reflect some of the things you're hearing nationally that would socialize a lot of things. And I don't mean that government would be taking over necessarily, but they're going to be regulating to the point that they might as well take over rental markets, or cap and trade is going to be coming down the pike, which is a kind of like a new Green Deal idea. And health care for all, essentially, sounds great. How are we going to pay for it?
It doesn't sound great to me.
Yeah, sounds like, well, that'd be great if everybody had health care, but how are we going to pay for it is always the question.
Yeah.
And
can you, for people who don't know, and remind me even, that supermajority, what that is right now in the House and Senate?
In the Senate, Democrats hold 20. No, I know we have 12. Okay, so they have 18. I can do it the other way.
Okay, yeah.
Yes. Okay, so they have 2/3, which is what they need to raise taxes. If they have all the votes. But I will say that we do have Senator Betsy Johnson, who is a Democrat, and historically she has not supported some of these tax increases. So it remains to be seen whether they actually, in practice, have a supermajority on the Senate side. They have a supermajority and then some on the House side, however, and that's where these revenue-raising bills, of course, originate or are supposed to originate.
I'm sorry, what is
funny?
What's on the House? Is there a
well, no, they have a supermajority over there. They have.
They have over 2/3.
They have, yes, they have more than
more than 2/3.
Yes.
Okay.
So I can't remember the numbers offhand,
well,
but they have more.
Keep hoping that people won't like the way things go. I mean, I hear liberal people all the time complaining about property rights and what they can't do with their own property, and complaining about the fees they have to pay, like if they go to DMV. Mm-hmm. But somehow it's still in their mind that that's the way to vote.
Mm-hmm. Well, just today, for instance, on the Senate floor, we had Senate Bill 6, I think it was 608. I don't remember the number. Don't quote me on the number, but I think it was 608. And it had to do with rent control. There have been attempts over the years in different sessions to enact some form of rent control, meaning that they would put a cap on how high rents can go from year to year. And this would be the first time that, if it's passed through both the House and then gets signed by the governor, this will be the first time it's become a statewide rent control policy. And they said they are just starting. This is not going to be the end of it. They're not going to say that, hey, we've achieved it. And I guarantee you they're not, because this is not going to work. And people are still going to not be able to afford houses or apartments. There will still be people who are going to have issues, and they're not addressing the underlying problem, which has to do with government regulation. So enacting more regulation to overcome too much regulation does not work.
Right. There's other parts of the country where there's very little regulation, and people find it a lot easier to have a decent living.
Yeah.
So, okay, well.
Yeah. Oh, and then you talked about minimum wage. Wages have actually been going up simply because employers need employees, and to get them, they have to entice them with, I'll pay you a little bit more than this person over here, and so there's competition for that for the labor force, and they will pay more and bring in more benefits.
Now, I don't know how the farmers, we have a farm ourselves, and we do mushrooms, but the only way to make it happen, we already have mushroom farmers that had to quit. I mean, over the last 10 years, it's survival of the fittest already when you're in the farming business. And so we've seen most farmers quit. I would say well over half of the farmers we saw quit. The other farms are like us, where they had to just somehow find a way to get bigger and bigger and bigger, so they're able to kind of stay on top. But that doesn't do anything. I would really like to see farmers be able to have a small farming business that would succeed. But there's no way that raising wages are going to help when it's already a desperate situation for farmers. And of course, raising the rates just mean, or the what the hourly wage. We have to raise our mushroom costs, and then we're competing even more with the Chinese. We're even competing more for people across the country that don't have this minimum. So
yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot different world when you're talking about commodities and food and
it's a real
anything involved
life.
with farming. Yeah, it is puts you guys in a bind. That's for sure.
Yeah,
making things more expensive, and your product more expensive just makes us less competitive, and we don't want to do that to our businesses. And unfortunately, we continue to do that to our businesses. So
more and more business fails. So that's why. Yeah. Okay. Well, so what else we got?
Well, let's see. Recently, the Senate Majority Office is talking about legislation that would set the stage for universal health care. And it would, the bill in question, which is Senate Bill 770, would set up a new board that would set up the Health Care for All Oregon plan. Now, they've been teeing up for this for a long, long time, and just incrementally getting us to that point. And so we'll see where this goes, but there's a big drive to pass things like this that are really, I don't know how you can sustain it over the long run.
I heard we couldn't even pay for Obamacare, the Oregon Health Plan.
Well, those keep going. The premiums keep going up for people, even when they're subsidized. It is hard. We have gotten more people covered. You do have more subsidized, I can't say the word, premiums for people who are on the Oregon Health Plan, but they're, being subsidized to purchase these other plans. It did increase the number of people who are covered by insurance. You still have issues with the emergency room overuse. You still have issues with, not everybody's covered, but this is what they're trying to get at. It's good intentions. It's doing good, but with other people's money. That's really what it comes down to in a lot of the policies that we're seeing set before us in this legislative session. So,
Are all intentions good? Because I get the feeling most of the time. I mean, I'm not gonna, I don't want to talk about Agenda 21 right now and that kind of thing. But I have a feeling a lot of times it's about their control. There's not any good intentions.
Well, I think you're right. I think there's probably a hierarchy of people that want that control, but they sell it and wrap it up in good intentions.
Good intentions, okay. Yeah. And there's a lot of people that you work with.
And a lot of people buy into that.
And people that you work with too.
They're true believers, and that this is a good thing to do. So I don't think they're part of that overarching whatever hierarchy of folks that really want to get control over the American mind and economy, and we could go into all the UN stuff that's going on.
What's next?
Well, there is a bill. It's House Bill 2020. It's called Cap and Invest. And if it passes the way it is written, it is contended by AAA that Oregonians would pay the third highest gas prices in the nation. Just under that, for very little environmental impact or improvement.
And so what are they doing with all these tax dollars? Who gets them?
But it's not tax dollars, they say. It is, there's no revenue being raised, yet they'll talk about where they're going to spend all the money they're going to get on all the revenue they raised. So
how can they regulate the price of gas and not have money benefits from it? I mean,
well, they
will.
They will, but they're not. They're just saying that's not a tax. It's laughable.
Is it the
but-
kind of the bait and switch when they raise fees because people won't put up with raised taxes, so they raise fees?
I don't know. What they're trying to say is that the polluters have to pay. So if anybody, any industry, any company emits more than, I believe it is 25 megatons. Don't quote me on that either. There's so many things going on. But over a certain threshold, they will, depending on what the industry is, either give them some allowances for a little while to go over that amount, or if they're not lucky to get those allowances given to them by the state, they'll have to pay. It'll go into some sort of fund, as I understand it, and then they would decide where to spend it in the state. And a lot of this would be very vague. People impacted by climate change, mental health for people impacted by climate change. You could lump a whole bunch of things into that. It's just very interesting. It's just a wealth transfer. That's really what it is. But it's wrapped in the guise of, well, we're going to make the polluters pay and therefore benefit society through that. That's what they're saying.
So who has been affected by, well, what they say climate change?
Well, they'll talk about rivers that will maybe change course and maybe erode. Wildfires caused because of too much undergrowth, because we have greenhouse gases, which helps encourage this undergrowth, which fuels these big fires that we have, and therefore that would be climate change.
Oh, no, but it can't be because we can't cut down the trees, you know.
No, that is not.
So basically they can divert responsibility and they can blame everything on climate change.
Yes.
And they have no responsibility for their regulations.
Well, they're saying they would help clean up some of the forest debris and all that underbrush, but it's there because of climate change, not because of bad management of our forests. No, it is because of climate change. So that's going to be coming towards you. In fact, they're going to be making stops all around the state as a committee, and I believe it's the Carbon Committee. I don't know. There's a lot of little environmentally related committees. Don't quote me on that either. But they will be going around the state to present this bill and get feedback ostensibly from the community,
Yeah.
from the various communities out there, I should say.
Yeah. I did a lot of research one time on Agenda 21 from their own page, and they have these little subcommittees. Again, they present it as all well intentions, but there's so many of them. There's, you know, hundreds or thousands of little groups that are doing good things for the environment that they don't even know what they're doing is they're really helping the agenda get pushed through. And so, yeah, everybody's just kind of set in place, and when they talk about it, they really feel strongly in what they're doing. But they don't understand they're working for, you know, a chief, you know, agenda. A bigger group, yeah.
Yeah.
And so you're the expert on guns. You're the go-to legislature on guns.
There's
so.
a lot. Well, there are a lot of firearm bills. There was one submitted by a couple of legislators on behalf of some students. It was a student group. I think it was Students for Change. That or something like that, where they wrote the bill. Essentially, I asked Senator Wagner, who is a chief sponsor of Senate Bill 501, where did this come from? He explained to me that he was among a group of students, and they're basically whipped up, telling him, "What are you going to do about firearms deaths?" And I think it was after some tragedy, I'm sure, and it was something that he was kind of cornered into doing. It sounded like to me, he didn't say that, but he said, well, if you write a bill to the students, I will sponsor it on your behalf. And so they came up with this bill that has all these different things in it, and I hear from the chair of the Committee on the Senate Judiciary that it's not going to get a hearing, but who knows? It could in some other form get a hearing, but there's still plenty of other bills that are out there that sound good at a first glance like we want to protect our children, so therefore we want to keep guns locked up or with a lock on them, which.
So it forces everybody in their home to keep a lock on their
Yes.
on their firearms, whether it works in their. Yeah. So and
Right.
what are we going to have, like a policeman come and knock at our door and or kick down our door and look and see?
Well, no, I just think that when the robbers show up to, steal everything from you, or worse, that you just have to say, wait a minute.
Yeah, let me get my key.
Hang on.
Let me walk down the hallway.
Yeah, so I think there are some practical problems with that sort of proposal. There are also proposals to require basically gun safety training to young students, and not on how to use it, but what to do when a young person encounters one. And first of all, don't touch it. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that would help prevent some of these tragedies if we would educate, like we used to, maybe, in regards to how guns and firearms should be treated, or absolutely not touched by a little kid. So there are proposals. There are a lot more details in that, but it would be a voluntary thing. They wouldn't make kids do it, but parents could opt their kids out of it. I think, and that one's gaining some bipartisan support. I appreciate that. So that's kind of a good thing. There are proposals that would ban gun sales essentially to anybody under 21. So you can go off and fight a war, be armed, etc., vote, die for our country. You would not be able to buy a gun in Oregon. So that's another proposal. There are also repeals or talks of repealing Measure 5 or changing it somehow, or Measure 5 and 50 actually, property tax measures, which would result in people's property taxes going up.
But if property taxes go up, then you have to raise the rent, but then they put a cap on the rent.
That's okay. Doesn't matter. Just shh.
So either way, to be a homeowner, if all these go through, they're going to make so
plus
little.
Some form of a gross receipts tax. I don't know what that looks like yet. If they're looking at a sort of a Washington style, what they call B&O tax. Don't ask me what the B&O stands for. It's like a tax. It's like a small percentage based on your business activities in the state. So I don't know. There are a lot of different tax proposals floating around the building, and of course they're looking to fund education at a much higher amount. There are proposals to, of course, transportation still continues to be an issue. You look at I-5, 205, there are a number of things that people are really clamoring for change on, so that we don't have so much congestion.
Yeah.
So they're wanting money for that, they're wanting money for education. There are a number of like courthouses that need to be upgraded. I just talked to somebody about that. We want to have a better public defense system so that people do have their rights protected when they're accused of a major crime and they can't afford an attorney. I do think that's important.
Yeah.
There are a number of things, and it all takes money. And of course, I'm not seeing any money being pulled from anything.
Well, it doesn't sound like
So-
everything you mentioned. It doesn't encourage more business. I mean, you said that there's even like a little, I can't remember what you said, little tax increase based on
Right.
different business activities around the state. Well, that's just going to prohibit business activity.
Well, I mean, if they would get rid of the income tax like they did up in Washington, maybe this wouldn't be such a bad thing. I don't know. But they're always just talking about adding more taxes.
Yeah.
It's always about raising more revenue.
Yeah.
But I think it'll end up not producing what they think it will
Yeah.
in the long run. So.
And education, they want more money for that.
Yes.
We're already paying a huge amount of money. I mean, I get back to me, I went to public school, I went to private school, so I'm one person. I can really see the difference between the two. But getting my kids through private school, it's about $700 a month, expensive, but they have a fantastic education. And what we're seeing now, it sounds like, aren't they getting like, each student costs like $12,000 or $13,000 a year?
Okay, and I'm on the Joint Committee on Student Success, and here's what I was hearing. Because last session, the legislature spent an additional approximately $2 billion more on education. I'm like, okay, they shouldn't be complaining. I mean, there shouldn't be that much angst out there in the school community about that. But what I learned is a lot of that money ended up going to PERS and paying for these PERS promises that were made years and years and years ago. Mm-hmm. And so, no, I'm not talking about current.
Of the educational PERS,
well, every local government, including school districts, they have to pay, they get assessed a PERS amount. And so that really takes a big chunk out of their budget. And so when we gave them $2 billion, it really didn't, in the long run, because a lot of it went to paying for the old PERS promises that were made long ago. In addition to healthcare expenses, healthcare, premiums for insurance, et cetera. Have been steadily increasing, so that took a huge chunk. Mm-hmm. Hardly any of it made it into the classroom. Mm-hmm. In fact, many school districts still had to lay off people, or they weren't able to make the hires that they anticipated they would, or were hoping to, because of this black hole, essentially, that we have in PERS. Yeah. Now, next, you're going to ask me, are there going to be any proposals to change that? I'm hoping so. I hope so. I haven't heard specifics, but there have been people working on this for years and years, and they do have some good ideas, and let's hope we can gain some traction with bending that trajectory a little bit. Yeah, okay. Well, I see that there's so much to talk about and so little time. Is there anything else you want to add before we need to close? No, but people do need to know about the online or the legislative information system. It's called OLIS, O-L-I-S, and you can keep track of agendas, you can keep track of bills, you can keep track of topic areas. It is a pretty robust system, and that it's a good way to learn about what's happening.
Right. So. Okay, and that's it?
That's it.
Okay. Well, thank you. Hope we can talk soon and see what they did overall.
Yeah.
So when's the session in?
Theoretically, at the end of June.
Okay.
I hope so. Yeah. We were supposed to be able to get out before July 4th by starting a little earlier, and that's why we started January 22nd instead of in February.
Okay, that's a great idea. So. All right, well, I hope so. Okay, well, what can you do? You can go to olis.org, I think.
Or just Google or OLIS Oregon. That gets you there, too.
There you go. And also, if you happen to be a Democrat watching or you're in a Democratic area, feel free to call your legislators and say, hey, I'd really like to keep a lot of my gun rights. Please don't raise our fees. It's hard enough. Just be in communication with them, and hopefully it'll slow things down a bit, because the Republicans right now, there's nothing that they can do. All they can do is go do their job, try to be there, try to speak out, but they don't have to listen to them. And your encouragement and prayers, I know, are necessary for Oregon to go in the right direction. Thanks for tuning in. Have a good week. Bye-bye. When I bring you information, I want the people you are hearing to be attentive to our needs.
Getting out in the community, visiting with people.
Common sense and transparency.
Anybody at the legislature to hear from people.
Got to get people engaged, energized.
Freedom is like water. It will find its own level. You take care of the spending, some of the other things take care of themselves.
Taxpayer-funded abortions, and divert that $21 million to women's health crisis centers.
Minister and provide safety and infrastructure for people as a collective.
That to address some of the veterans homeless programs.
Being able to defend yourself effectively is a civil liberty.
They are now going to do something I think is revolutionary.
Conscientious, we need to move forward.
Ensure that government is doing what we believe it is supposed to.
Let your opinions be known.
Happy to help them out.
Stay informed. Know your representative. Give them a call. They'll listen to your concerns. And be aware, there are other ways you can stay connected to what's happening at our Capitol in Salem.